please.
Hopefully this works out okay. You know, can everyone see something on their screen?
Okay, perfect.
Is it fine?
That's
See?
good.
Okay,
Okay.
lovely.
Yeah, that's
Okay, so now that we are 8 minutes past the hour, I would like to apologize for starting so late. But hello, my name is Tao, pronouns they, them, and I am a doctoral student in ecogastronomy at UNISC. I am first and foremost a medical anthropologist, which is a very fancy word to say that I like studying how different people heal or access medicine around the world, space and time. So I would like to invite you all, you beautiful people, scholars, plant nerds, foodies, and supportive lurkers from around the world to listen to my chat today. I'm very grateful for the university allowing me to look at traditional Cambodian medicine or traditional Khmer medicine instead of Gambian medicine, which is like West African medicine, because when you do a PhD, it's supposed to be your heart and soul. And as much as I loved researching in the Gambia, I had a lot of personal problems with feeling like I was in some ways a colonizer or an outsider encroaching on people who I have very close and touch relationships with and that I care about very much. And I felt that it wasn't my story to tell. So UNISC was very nice and allowed me to switch my research project to study food medicine in Cambodia, which is very near and dear to me as a first generation Cambodian American. And I am contributing to this decolonization of academia, which is a fancy way of saying I'm really sick of European scholars talking about my people, so I've decided to research them, and there are many wonders. So the title of my talk is A Matter of Taste, Flavor and Form as Indicators for Humoral Ecological Effects of Traditional Khmer Food Medicines During Maternity. So that is a very big title, and I mostly gave it that title because it sounds nice in an academic sense, but I'm all about accessibility in academia, which means I believe research is for everyone. So to explain what my research is, I like to look at how Khmer people, like Cambodian people, such as myself, use the taste and flavor of foods or food medicines and to use their taste to understand and figure out what the effects it will have on their health, specifically as it relates to humoral health, which I will talk about later on. I would like to say that this is not a talk about Western medicine versus traditional medicine. Please don't ask me about how I feel about anti-vax and vaccines. I'm just going to tell you to get vaccinated. And I'm very interested in making this kind of an exploration of the relationships between different types of medical systems. It's not a competition, it's just a conversation and an exploration. So when you go into this presentation, I want you to think about that. Okay, let's see. Hopefully this doesn't break. So what will we be talking about today? We're going to have 4 distinctive sections. Humans and plants, a brief overview, where I'll be talking about the wild and wonderful weeds and herbs of the world. And there's Magical Mystery Soup, where I talk about food and medicine and how they are related and at sometimes the same thing. Then I will talk about traditional and complementary medicine, or TCAM, so kind of looking at these different frameworks and contextualizing them so you can understand why it's such a big deal, traditional medicine. And then lastly, I will share some of my research when I went to Cambodia earlier this year, unfortunately during a pandemic. Okay, so humans and plants, very exciting stuff, am I right? We as humans have had a very colorful, integrative, extensive relationship with plants. I mean, can you imagine like sometime during the natural world around us, someone decided, let me go take that. Let me go eat that. This has been studied by many scholars in many different disciplines, around the world. And some of them are philosophical, some of them are more scientific. But otherwise, prior to the development of agriculture, our human ancestors foraged and gathered many different kinds of flora as a part of their diets, which supplied them with a lot of minerals, proteins, vitamins, and trace elements. So you can say that we really do like plants, especially flowering plants. It has been documented within the mammalian diet, including our ancestors, all our different ancestors, all the different things that we're trying to eat. They have had a lot of wild plants. What ancestors I'm mostly talking about is our hominid ancestors. So human ancestors and like primates. And as emphasized by Dr. Uliasek in his book, Evolving Human Nutrition, along with Dr. Mann and Dr. Elton, he said that, indeed, flowering plant foods form the dietary bedrock of many human populations. So to say that we were all plant-based at one point of time, vegan is not a new thing. We were vegan for a while, but then we started eating brains and dead animals, and that became a whole thing. For the most part, it is really crucial to understand that plants are very important to us. And we ate things with seeds, we ate things like bark, we ate things like fungus, and for some reason it didn't kill us. It made us stronger. An enormous amount of these wild plants are also medicinal. In fact, in Dr. Nina Etkin's book, Francis King wrote, an enormous number of wild plants have pharmacological effects, and many of these were familiar to historic peoples. People may discover medicinal properties of plants in the process of searching for edibles. So what this quote shows us is that not only were we eating a lot of plants, we were also using them or hoping to use them and take advantage of all of their different benefits. Not to say that they were always beneficial. I'm pretty sure someone has eaten a poisonous mushroom and we never heard of them because they disappeared off the face of the earth in all of history. But the idea is that, can you imagine you're just walking around and you're that first person in all of human history to say, I discovered that I could eat that. And that brings me to our next example, the wonderful discovery of fugu. So if you know me at all, you know that I love The Simpsons, and there's this great episode where they go to Japan and Homer decides to try this dish called fugu, which is pufferfish, which is very poisonous if you don't prepare it correctly. So this is just a fun example of how the act of foraging, gathering, collecting, and hunting food has always been fraught with danger, in addition to healing. But going back to plants again, in Penn et al. 2014, they talk about how humankind was incredibly dependent on botanical material, once again, plants, for medical needs to retain this vitality, basically to survive. It was just a game of let's run away from that monster and let's eat that thing that may or may not kill us. Overall, human history has been fraught with a lot of dangerous plants, but a lot of helpful ones too. So now we move on to this idea of food as medicine. And I'm going to apologize to everyone listening because I might ask for a little bit of audience participation, which is really grim because I usually hide in, like, I don't know, a blanket and never respond when I'm in a lecture. But I started asking a few of my friends, when I say food medicine, what do you think of? Some people said that they think of honey, some people say they think of lemons, some people say they think of soup. So if you're at your computer right now and you want to throw a message into the chat of what you think about, that would be really nice. So when I say food medicine, what does that mean? But overall, I would like to say that the idea of thinking of food as medicine and as interrelated or the same thing is not a new idea. It's a very well thought out cross-cultural thing. And as the chat says, Martha says ginger. Yes, I also think of that. Data says herbals, food combinations. Malte says food medicines with bitter flavors. Anna says ginger, honey, lemon for sore throats and colds. Carla says plants as medicine. But yes, so this idea is definitely very, very widespread. The way that we tend to think about it, especially as people, but also in academia, people tend to put them as two separate entities. Like, this is food, this is medicine. This is food, this is medicine. And this talk, we're going to talk about how that is not always the case. So in this really wonderful book by Dr. Pironi at UNISC and Dr. Lisa Price, they write about this intersection of eating and healing. And there's this wonderful quote to describe it, where they say, there's a gray area between food and medicine, and they're very interested in how these two cosmos overlap and penetrate each other, especially within the context of traditional cultures and traditional ways of eating and food, especially within indigenous cultures. So what they're basically saying is that it's all kind of interconnected, and yes, that is the case, in my opinion. So what is traditional medicine? Like, Tao, why have you brought me to this chat to describe why traditional medicine is so important? Well, first, we have to kind of go over the definition. So traditional medicine, according to the World Health Organization, or WHO, just as a sort of side remark, it's not the WHO, it's the WHO. Please don't call them the WHO. The WHO is a good band, but they are the WHO. So traditional medicine, according to the WHO, is the sum total of the knowledge, skill, and practices based on the theories, beliefs, and experiences indigenous to different cultures, whether explicable or not, used in the maintenance of health as well in the prevention, diagnosis, improvement, or treatment of physical and mental illness. There's a lot to say. So in summary, traditional medicine is all that fun knowledge in a culture about how it relates to medicine and how they approach it. Traditional medicine is often kind of grouped into this designation or a name of traditional, complementary, alternative, integrative medicine. They're all a little bit different, but they're all very closely related and slightly the same, in my opinion. But the two that I want you to focus on today is traditional and complementary. So now you know what traditional medicine is. So now we're going to talk about complementary medicine. So traditional medicine is all those specific beliefs in a culture about medicine. What does complementary medicine mean, and how does that relate to traditional medicine? So once again, WHO defines the WHO. I'm just messing with you. So the WHO defines complementary medicine, a broad set of care practices that are not a part of that country's own tradition or conventional medicine, and are not fully integrated into the dominant healthcare system. Okay, so now we have traditional medicine, which is all the cultural special stuff that's unique in a culture. And then we have complementary medicine, which kind of suggests that it is one of many options for people to heal themselves. So in some societies, which we call medical pluralisms in anthropology, that's just a fancy way of saying, here is a society, have one type of way of treatment, Western medicine. We also have traditional medicine, which might be different in the sense that they have different practitioners, different standards, and things like that. And those two coexisting is a medical pluralism. Their relationship is complementary because you have one and the other. So the traditional medicine system could also be complementary because it's not fully recognized in a society as a part of the overall health structure. That was a lot. I'm so sorry. So why is traditional and complementary medicine very important? Well, first of all, it provides a lot of people around the world with a way to access some form of healthcare. We have a lot of good doctors around the world and we have a lot of good medicine, but unfortunately, that medicine doesn't get to the people who may need it the most at the same time in an accessible way. When you think of traditional medicine, it has a long, long history. There are many different traditional medicine systems. There's traditional Chinese medicine, there's Mediterranean Greek medicine, there's Ayurvedic medicine, there is Brazilian medicine, there's a lot of different types. There's bush medicine, there's so many. And they all share this shared idea, that people need to be healed. So once again, going back to the WHO, they have this nice global report on traditional and complementary medicine. And this was published in 2019. And of the member states, you can see that a lot of different countries in different regions around the world have an actual national policy relating to that, showing that traditional medicine is a very important part of people's day-to-day lives. And it provides a lot of protection and access to medicine for people who need it the most. That is why I choose to study it, and this is why I believe it's important. So for the case of Cambodia, Cambodia has a very special type of system. It's actually a blend of 3 different types. When people think of Cambodia, they mostly think of Angkor Wat, Angkor, and they think of Khmer Kaham, which is the Khmer Rouge. So as it relates to traditional medicine, we're going to delve into that now because it's very important to understand the history behind traditional medicine before we get into the research per se. So in Cambodia, we have a botanical, I guess, crisis going on. In the 1970s, when the Khmer Rouge had their genocide, there was only about 1,000 academics in the entire country. And after the genocide, only 87 of them survived, and none of them were botanists. They burnt down all the libraries and all the plant records, so there's like nothing there basically left. All the plants in the area are set for extinction in the next 80 years. Can you imagine being a biodiversity hotspot with no record of any of your plants or flora? It's really important. And also, the Ministry of Health reported that up to 50% of people in Cambodia use traditional medicine plants every single day. 70 to 80% of them use it to treat diseases. So in order to understand medicine in Cambodia, you have to understand the plants. When I think of Cambodia, I think of this kind of beautiful, serene place with cattle around and stray dogs and cats. But also, it has a very dark and beautiful history in the sense where we've got the ruins of Angkor of Prasat, which is Khmer for the temple ruins. And if you can see here in this image I put up, this is a carving from Prasat Bayan, which is the Bayan temple where you can see all the giant Buddha heads. And this is actually a carving of midwifery, which I thought would be fun to share. So in Khmer medicine, like I said, it's based on 3 models of explanation in terms of sickness and illness and disease. You have a supernatural component, so like magic, there's magic involved, naturalistic, which is air and all of those natural elements. And then we have humoral maintenance, which I will go into later. You can access Khmer traditional medicine in 3 different ways. You can go to a grandma or a grandpa in your village and talk to the Kru Khmer and they will heal you. You can talk to a Kru Chalrup, who is a medium, a spiritual medium, who is also a person who can heal you, or you can go to a pagoda and speak to a monk and they will also heal you. So how does this all relate once again? So this is a picture of the Khmer Rouge as they unfortunately went to Angkor Wat and destroyed many of its beautiful ruins. But during the genocide period, people were not allowed to use Western medicine. So traditional medicine became increasingly important for Cambodian people because it was the only way they could access medicine at all. It was like you either used traditional medicine or you suffered and potentially died. So it became very, very important to the people in the generations beyond. So this is a picture of Fali, who is my naturalist friend in Siem Reap. And I asked him how Cambodian people feel about medicinal plants and food, and if they were the same or not, or how are they related. He basically said that they were the same and that they use them every day. So I did some research in Cambodia, like I said, in February. I went to Siem Reap Province in the northwest. Here are some of the districts we went to, as marked by the orange star. That is where we were researching. This is me and my research team. There's Sapia, King Sapia, there's Soram, there's Darina, and then there's Nekrul Yoleng and Sobanahol, Dr. Sobanahol, who's at the Paris Herbarium, and she is the only tropical botanical taxonomist on the Cambodian plants there is in the entire world. So we went around and asked a bunch of people, literally on bicycles and motorbikes. We went around the villages and we asked a lot of different people about what food medicine and traditional medicine during maternity was like in Cambodia. So here is a soul caller. Her job is literally to use traditional medicine and prayer to call your soul. And here are some other people that we spoke to. These two women over here are traditional healers. This one is a traditional medicine salesperson. These are traditional medicine users and also another healer, and also a user plus the son of a traditional medicine healer. Okay, so in traditional medicine, a lot of different types use something called humoral medicine. If you're familiar at all with humoral medicine, it's this kind of idea that we are governed internally by different types of humors, and it's attributed to kind of things that are hot and dry and wet and cold, and it's all related to a different part of your body, your feelings. So sometimes blood, there's bile, there's yellow and black bile, and there's phlegm. And the reason why that you get sick is because there is an imbalance in these areas. So when we did the research in Cambodia, we found that there's basically three parts of maternity that they refer to. There's Daipua, which is pregnancy, and there's Chlongtonle, which is postpartum and giving birth, which they kind of put together. And these different sectors of maternity have different humoral requirements. So meaning that during that time, your body is too hot or too cold. So according to Khmer Medicine, when you're pregnant, your body is very, very hot, and you need to eat things or take medicine that makes your body cool down. And then vice versa, once you give birth, you are losing all of that heat and your body is really cold. So you need to eat foods and take medicines that make your body warm again. So we learned that during maternity, people participate in different types of which are special diets, which include a lot of different food restrictions. Usually it was because to protect the baby or the fetus and ensure an easy delivery. So from the maternal mother's health side, you want an easy delivery, and from a baby side, you want an easily delivered baby who is alive. We found that specific food medicines were used at the 5th to 9th month of pregnancy. So depending on the person you spoke to, they would say that they use these medicines, quote unquote, either at month 5 or sometimes up to 9, and then up until 6 months after they gave birth. And I also found out, because you would think that, Tao, what if you took an ingredient or something that was cold and you served it as a soup, which is hot? Does this mean that the humoral effect of the food changes? It does not change, which I thought was very interesting. So I will give you some examples now. So like I said, during pregnancy, your body is really hot and your body is full of fluid and very wet because you are nursing this fetus. You require cold foods that are dry, according to Khmer Medicine. So some foods here listed in blue would be examples of foods that are cold. So most of these food medicines, winter melon, the neem plant, so it's Rolak in Khmer, the neem plant, or Stao in Khmer, morning glory, the Puan. All of these foods are bitter green vegetables. There's also neutral foods, humorally neutral foods, like coconut juice, rice, sugarcane. All of these things are either sweet tasting or neutral. Is it hold on, question really quick. Is pre and postnatal medicine the same thing or it changes? It's different. It is different. And I'll go into that. So now, once again, we're going to go to this hot foods, which include things that are strong tasting, like garlic, ginger, black pepper. So these are saltier, strong flavors. And these are the types of foods that will make your body hot. So, for example, what food that would be prenatal, I guess you could also say, would be really, well, prenatal foods is more so like preparation, but if you were pregnant, you would have to eat foods that are dry and contain a lot of these colder vegetable options. So let's see. So here's a typical spread of Cambodian food. This is rice, these are fresh vegetables. Right here, if you can see, this is stao. This is a neem plant, which they eat fresh. So when I say dry foods, I mean foods that do not have much broth in it or actually are dry. A good example would be this dried/grilled fish right here. Would be dry and good for pregnancy. This is a stir fry with beef and spinach and cabbage and cauliflower. And these would also be considered dry foods. Another food that was very well documented as both dry and helpful for pregnancy is the ostrich egg. There are, I want to say, Facebook Marketplace advertisements saying, Khmer, please buy the ostrich egg for your wife or lover. She will love it. It is a very popular thing because it is accessible protein and it is just associated with making your child very smart. So a lot of people tend to eat them when they're pregnant. In addition to eating these dry and cold foods, like humorally cold foods, women tend to drink these special decoctions, which is a fancy word of saying boiling water with a plant. And here are some examples of traditional medicine plants for maternity. I couldn't identify them all, but this was literally in a stand on the side of the road. It's very common. It is as common as it is slightly illegal because some of these plants had been foraged and taken from protected areas of conservation. So there is that ethical question. But at the same time, I prefer to understand this as just a means of daily life because it was just an open market. So when they would take these plants and they would put them into these giant jugs to create something called srasa, which translates directly to alcohol that is white alcohol. It is Cambodian rice wine. As you can see, despite them all being srasa, there are many different ingredients in there. I found that in addition to plants, because most of them tend to use plants, a lot of them included a lot of animal parts. So I'm so sorry for anyone who doesn't want to hear this, but some of the things that came in my research included the stomach of porcupines, red ants, slow lorises, the gallbladder of Asian sun bear, elephant tusks. There are a lot of different traditional medicine recipes that include these rare and very precious animal parts. I wasn't able to find any, gladly, because I would not like to see that, but for the most part, I want you to know that this does go on. So moving on to the types of foods that people eat once they've given birth, because I've given you, like, if you eat humorally cold foods and dry foods when you're pregnant, what happens when you give birth? Well, since your body has lost all that heat and you want to heat it up again, you've got to eat these special foods. So here, this is pa, which is caramelized pork stew. So it's made with like pork belly, eggs, lots of ginger, a lot of black pepper. Almost every single woman I interviewed told me she ate this or heard that she should eat this. It's really good. I had it a lot growing up. Next is chakne, which is sauteed chicken and ginger. You can see that they really don't hold back on the ginger at this dish. I think it's basically like 2 hands of ginger in there. And lastly, there is bile, which is rice porridge. It is very plain. And what's the most common accompaniment to it is salt, black pepper, garlic, and dried fish. So anything very salty. So going back to that, we can see that there's kind of a different flavor profile for each type of humoral effect. We can understand that cold foods tend to be bitter, and we can understand that sweet or neutral tasting things are neutral humorally. And lastly, salty or strong flavored things are hot humorally. There's also a lot of different forbidden foods in Khmer traditional medicine because they were believed to cause phlegm, which is a postpartum sickness that can affect women up to, one woman told me, 10 years of her life. So it really scares a lot of these women to listen. Some of the forbidden foods include sour or fermented foods. So we have something called prahok, which is a fermented fish paste that's in a lot of different types of Cambodian soup. They actually distinguish between the types of soup based on whether or not they include prahok. So if you have a soup that has prahok in it, it's called somla, and then whatever, like ingredients in it. So somla machu, sour soup, somla prahal, the village soup. If it does not have fermented fish in it, it's called sngao, and those are allowed to be eaten, not anything with prahok in it. There are certain fruits and raw vegetables that have bad spiritual connotations. So eggplants are a big no-no. I had like 25 women tell me not to eat an eggplant, and only 2 of them told me why. They said that they were full of bad spirits, and I believed them. Spicy foods are not allowed throughout your entire maternity. And when I say spicy, I mean things with chilies in it. I don't mean like extra thyme or basil or anything like that. I literally mean something that you put in your mouth that has capsaicin in it. Lastly, we had fish with scales. Women during their maternity could not have fish with scales, so they eat other different types of species of fish. Like according to, I'm not sure if this is true because I haven't seen a giant snakehead fish, but my research assistant Saram says that they're okay to eat. Cambodians also eat a lot of freshwater snails, and they're unable to eat that during maternity. Here's some pictures of examples of forbidden food. This is a common snack in Cambodia, lots of sour fruits eaten with chili, salt, and garlic. And lastly, this is one of the things which is made with fermented fish, and it's called has all these different wild vegetables and flowers on it, and it's spicy if you add the peppers to it. But these are some of the classical dishes of Cambodian cuisine that cannot be eaten when you're pregnant. So, in summary, I found that in my research, Cambodians are able to kind of test the waters humorally with new foods and different types of foods. by their taste. When they are unwell, they are able to determine individually whether or not they are feeling too hot or too cold in their humors, and they pursue different types of medicinal dishes or treatments, sometimes as teas, sometimes as herbs in a dish, sometimes actually as a whole dish, in order to meet their needs. It's really important to always think about how these are all related together, and it offers a short glimpse into how integrated medicine, healing, eating, and food and cuisine are in Cambodia. I just wanted to end with this lovely picture. Once again, a carving at Prasat Bayan, and it is of a cook in the ancient Khmer Empire. As you can see, kind of cooking this animal and preparing stew, and it was directly to the left of the maternity one. So thank you so much for listening. I would like to thank Pangchen Sapia, Ming Sapia, Sorom, National Herbarium of Cambodia, and the Center for Khmer Studies for sponsoring and supporting me throughout my research. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. And greetings to your slide. Very beautiful, very interesting to suggesting, absolutely. Now is the possible time for the questions of students. Have any questions, please?
Oh, thank you, everyone. I was losing my voice.
Oh, yes, there's one question, probably.
I don't know if anyone's going to have any questions. Marta?
Yeah, on the chat.
Should I write or should I talk?
Either one is fine.
Okay, then thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I actually was curious on how did you approach the people you got these informations from. So like, how did you manage to get in touch with them like so well to get these, I mean, private or precious informations from them?
Okay, thank you so much, Martha. That's a very good question. I will start off by saying people in Cambodia as a culture are way more open with what they talk about as opposed to people in the West. Before I left for Cambodia, I had a big fight with the ethics committee of UNESCO because I mentioned, because I was talking about maternity, that someone might talk about abortion, for example. Because if they're using medicines for pregnancy, it might come up as a talk. And the second day I went to Cambodia, like in the field, the woman just talked about abortion so freely within 15 minutes of us talking to her. We did a lot of convenience sampling. So when I said that Sorom and Sapia and I, we got on a motorbike and went into the rural areas, I'm very serious about that. We went into random villages, walked up to people who were sitting down and were just like, hi, we're doing research on Khmer medicine. Can you talk to us? And they were like, oh yes, come, please sit down. Here's some mangoes. It was just all very open and warming. And I think because I can speak Khmer, and I'm also half Cambodian, it was easier for them to talk to me about it. But in other researchers' experience, because I spoke to a lot of researchers who did work in Cambodia before I went, they also had a very easy time speaking to people about this private information. Okay, let's see. There's a question from Malte, I think. And Malte asks, I wanted to ask if you have experienced any foods that are novel to Khmer cuisine being adopted into schemes of traditional medicines, or if they are rejected within that sphere. I think that a lot of the different things that are mentioned within that are special to Khmer cuisine happens to be fermented things and salty things. There's a lot of reasons for this. Some people believe that it's because during the genocide, a lot of people became accustomed to fermenting or foraging for different types of food. So they would collect these different types of foods and try to preserve them for a long time. So cuisine has been more stapley, sour, salty, spicy, and things like that. And I believe that it's all integrated. I don't think they are separate, and I do not think they're rejected. I think that there are very firm stances on what people can eat in Khmer medicine terms and what they can't eat. That doesn't mean they reject them. They recognize them and they're saying you shouldn't eat this for your health if you're pregnant or breastfeeding or just giving birth. Anna asks, how common is it for pregnant people in Cambodia to stick to these medicinal diets? So this is a fun question because one of the questions I asked is like after I asked all these women, what advice did they have? Like what did they receive? I asked them, did they follow that advice at all? Like, just because someone tells you to do something doesn't mean you will do it. Most of the women tended to pick and choose as they go. Like one woman said that her mother-in-law told her she couldn't eat desserts during her pregnancy, and then she complained about it to her husband, and her husband said, no, sweetie, go ahead, eat some dessert, and then she ate all the dessert. So it really depends. I found that most women tended to avoid 3 things. They just avoided fermented foods like the fish stuff, the fermented fish paste, or hock, and they avoided chilies. Everything else was pick or choose. Okay. Mecalia, I really hope I didn't butcher your name. I'm so sorry if I did. Asks, ethical consumption of medicine, especially with the use of animal products, does it occur? So there's been kind of debate in Cambodia about these different types of animal products, like you say. I don't think, in my experience and what I've read and what I saw in terms of ethical consumption, people tend to understand that it's bad. I think that the people who try to seek out products with the animal products in them tend to be people who are less educated about conservation, because there are a lot of different plant remedies that are only plants. They're also trying to do this in Vietnam, where they're trying to put out literature or tell people about remedies that only use plants and don't use animal parts. But why is traditional medicine stronger in some countries rather than other states? Okay, let's go back to this just for reference. Let's go back to the slide about the WHO and their member states. So one of the reasons I think traditional medicine is stronger in some areas is because there is a more robust cultural affinity for it, which is a fancy way of saying, I just think people really like traditional medicine. I think for Southeast Asia as a region, a lot of the traditional medicine practices are very integrated with Buddhist practices and also Islamic practices, for example, in Indonesia. And I think that the countries are just in need of providing not only a scientific approach, but a culturally compatible approach. It's very easy for people to access traditional medicine because it tends to be cheaper. And I know that Italy also has a pretty decent traditional medicine practice. If you read some of Professor Pironi's work, Andrea Pironi, you can see that he does a lot of research into ethnobotany and traditional medicine in the south of Italy. Also, okay, Stella asked, do you know if these views on medicinal foods change depending on the area of Cambodia, or is it nationwide? For example, having eggplants for having bad spirits. I'm not exactly sure about that. When I look at the other studies that have been done where they talk about foods and their sort of bad spiritual affiliations, it's been in the Cambodian diaspora in the US, who were refugees, and it's been in different parts of the country, such as Preveng or Mondulkiri, which is mountainous. But they all tend to have similar characteristics, taste-wise, and also different affiliations, saying some of these vegetables are bad-spirited. Ari asks, are there any direct contradictions you noticed between Khmer advice for food during maternity versus other groups in Cambodia? The only other group that I have observed besides traditional medicine is Western medicine. So sometimes people will say, like in traditional medicine, once you give birth, it's super important for you to only eat basically salt, black pepper, garlic, and the rice porridge. But this is a disaster when you're thinking about it, because you're breastfeeding. How are you going to nurture yourself as well as another life through breastfeeding if you're just eating rice, water, soup, and salt? So those are basically the biggest contentions. A lot of Western doctors who are running clinics in Cambodia really do not like traditional medicine beliefs in maternity because it restricts the women from actually eating things that may be more nutritious. A lot of women reported that they ate less after they gave birth because of the fear of getting phlegm, which is that postpartum illness after you give birth. So, is that it? Anyone else have any questions?
Other questions?
I will say, as kind of if no one has any questions, one big, wonderful, beautiful thing about maternity in Cambodia is that it's very communal. I know I was jokingly saying earlier that I wish I had more supervisors that were women because of my topic matter, but in Cambodian medicine and Cambodian maternity, men are super important. Men are gathering the plants for their wives. Men are cooking when their wives are pregnant, and men are supporting them through and through. And I am very happy to say that of all the people I interviewed, like roughly 40 people, all of them and their husbands were very involved in the entire process. It was not just a one family thing or a one couple thing, it was a community thing. And I found that very beautiful. All right.
Okay, but now, according to you, is for example, there is possible that this interesting culture of you described is sport in Western countries, or is two different, many different differences of culture, religion, etc.?
So Cambodia is a very unique kind of country because it is a very homogenous country.
Yeah.
In terms of the ethnic makeup, 97% of people are Khmer ethnically, and in terms of religious affiliations,
Yeah.
95% are Theravada Buddhist.
Okay.
So there's not much room for variation when you look at it as a grand scheme approach. But if you were to look at the different indigenous groups in Cambodia, I believe that they would be slightly similar, but also slightly different at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting. This important comparison between different culture, religion, and then habits about earth plants and food. Very interesting. Absolutely. Other questions or finish here? Okay.
Are we good? We're good.
But very interesting your speech, because there are many suggestions for reflection, also in sociological aspects. Very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much, Tao. and possible that you have a good thesis and a good career in university. But have you the intention to stay in Italy after your thesis, or doctorate, or return in England, in Cambodia, or other?
That's a loaded question, Professor Corvo. And I will just say and end this with whoever gives me money, because I love research, I want to get paid, and I feel that like queer people of color never get paid enough for anything, but most especially in academia. Our knowledge is important, so.
Yeah, okay. Good evening. Grazie. Grazie,
Grazie.
ciao, brava, complimenti.
Grazie mille, ciao.
Brava. Good evening to all, and see you for the next conference Monday with my colleague Professoressa Campanini and Professor Fino and Professor Laura about the presentation of Italian book. Bye. Ciao Maddalena.
Ciao,
Ciao,
grazie.
ciao. Grazie a te, ciao.